Hi, for this class today, we're going to be working with Photoshop Basics 1. So the first thing you need to do is go into the module for this week and you need to download the needed file, which is, I believe, called PS Basics 1 or something, or Lesson 1. And we're going to start from there. So go ahead and do that. Pause the video if you need to, and then come back and we will start into that. Okay, so now that you have the file that we're going to use downloaded, we're going to work with everybody kind of starting from the same page. So a couple things I want to show you how to do. First of all, this is the entry page that you're always going to come to when you open a Photoshop 2021. Yours is going to look slightly different if you've never used it before than mine does, because of the fact that I have used mine. It has some previous projects on it. So if the bottom of your screen is dark, don't worry about it. There shouldn't be anything there, or it could show you some of the tutorials down there. So it just depends. So on the screen here at the top, you're going to see on the left-hand side, it gives you some options. First one is Home. We're on the home screen. It also has Learn, and if you click on Learn, it's going to give you the tutorials that they offer. You can also find more tutorials at adobe.com if you're interested. Next down is where you're going to find your work. So you can find things like Lightroom photos, cloud documents, shared with you, delete it. So all these things that once you start working in the program, you should have more options here if you use any of these areas. Okay, I'm going to go back up here to Home just so we can all start from the same spot again. Then down here, you're going to see two different buttons. First, we're going to create a new one just so we can walk through this. Then I'm going to come back to this screen and we're going to actually use the Open button. So with Create New, you're going to click on Create New, and it's going to give you this new pop-up screen. In this pop-up screen, you can either create your own document you're going to use, or you can work from presets. So first, let's kind of look at creating your own document from the sizes you know you need. So right now, you may not see anything right here, or you may see just a few options here. Once you start working in the program, again, it's going to start giving you things that it realizes that you use on a regular basis. So those will all pop up in this area. So under Recent, right up here on the heading, we're going to go over here and you can change the name of the file right here under Preset Details. So you could change it. I'm just going to write Test in here for right now, since that's what we're doing. I'm just kind of showing you what to do. The next one down is Width, and then you also have Height. So under these two areas, you would just type in the numeric size that you want. Now, right here is a drop-down menu, and a lot of times when you first start off in the program, it'll be set to pixels. You want to make sure you change it to inches. Pixels are very, very small, so if you do a 6x6 pixel, it's going to come out extremely little. So you want 6 by 6 inches. Here is where you change your resolution. We discussed resolution during the multimedia part of this. If we were doing something that we knew that was just going to stay either on our computer screen, our phone screen, our tablet screen, we would leave it at 72 res. If we're doing something that we know that we want to print at some point, depending on how big you're going to print it, you're going to go somewhere between 150 and 300. I always do my projects at 300. I just start off there. You can always go down in size. It's harder to go up. So I always start high on my resolution, and then I can always shrink things down if I need to add it to a website or something like that. Then, because Photoshop is, because we're working in 72, we can leave it in RGB. If we knew we were going to print it, we might switch it to CMYK. You can also work in RGB, and then before you get ready to print something, you can always change it to CMYK. So I'm just going to leave it right here in RGB. The next one down is background content. It just means that whatever document that pops up that's blank on your screen once you hit create, that's what color it would be. It allows you to pick some different colors if you want to change them. I usually leave mine to white unless I'm working on something very specific. Then you would simply, don't do this right now, but you would simply hit create. I don't want you to hit create because I want to show you a couple different options that you can do up here. So I said you can use some presets. So again, Photoshop is broken down into what the main uses of Photoshop is. All the Adobe programs are kind of set up this way. So you can choose what the usual uses for this is. So we have up here, we have photo options. So if you click on photo, you're going to see that they have like 4x6 images, 5x7 image presets. So those usual photograph presets. Below it, you'll notice that it has templates. If you have your own license, not the school license, but if you have your own license, you can have Adobe Stock. That's where you would get all these templates. Now, since a lot of us, and through the school especially, do not have access to Adobe Stock, you can Google free templates and find a lot of templates that either resemble these. Sometimes you can find these exact templates. So don't just get discouraged just because you don't have stock. You can find templates other places for free if you just use Google. Okay, the next one over is print. This one's kind of nice because it gives you the letter, the legal, the tabloid. It gives you those common print sizes. And by selecting one, it automatically just switches it over on your preset details on the right. You also have art and illustration. You have web. You have mobile. And you'll notice on the mobile, it does give you iPad and iPhone settings, but you can also view others. So it does have some other, like the Apple Watch. It does have, a lot of these are Mac on here, but it does have some different ones on here that you can use. And a lot of times, a lot of these settings are going to be close, whether or not it's an iPhone or an Android or whatever type of phone, or the tablet settings are usually about the same size, so you can just use them. And the last one is film and video. You can do some film and video stuff in Photoshop. You just have to learn how to manipulate it. It's the same kind of things on a simpler basis that you can do in Premiere and After Effects. So we will be doing film and video more in those. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go down here and I'm going to hit close because I don't want to actually create a new document. I just wanted you to see how to do it. Okay, next you're going to go over here to open. And you're going to find your file that I had you guys download from the module. Again, while we're going through this, if you have any problems or you need to pause and go back or rewind, feel free to do that. I will be answering questions on any of these things next class that you have as well. So you might want to jot down notes. Okay, so the image that I have you opening today is this kind of swirly paint image. We're just going to do some basic things with it. We're going to kind of look at some tools, look at the workspace. I'm going to show you how to crop some stuff, explain to you where the layers are. So we're just going to kind of play with this. When we're done, I'm going to show you how to save it, and then you're going to turn this in for your in-class participation points. Okay, so first let's take a look at your workspace. Your workspace is everything you see on your screen right now. So you have the actual workspace where the image is placed, you have bars, you have panels, all of these things play into whatever you're specifically doing. Now, for this lesson, what I'll do is for the next 4 classes, I'm going to have you set your workspace to a very specific workspace. That way we're all on the same page and we can look at these things together. So on the top of your screen, you're going to go across to where it says window and do the drop down. Go down to the second one called workspace. And I want you to click on essentials. But you will notice under here that they have essentials, 3D, graphic and web, motion, painting, and photography. So whatever you're doing in Photoshop, they have workspaces that they've kind of predetermined. Also, you'll notice on mine, but not on yours, that I have one called Niehaus and Niehaus P1 up here. These are custom-made workspaces that I have developed for things that I use a lot. And you can do that by going into any of these other workspaces, kind of tailoring it. I'm going to show you how you can tailor it, and then you can go down here to New Workspace and name it whatever you want to name it and be able to save it and then constantly go back to it. So I'm going to go to Essentials Default. Now, while we're on the topic of finding your workspace and setting your workspace, I want to show you one more thing. So a lot of times when people are working in these, the problem that they'll have is that they're doing something, they don't realize it, and they may accidentally close something. So I just closed that panel and I'm like, oh no, where'd it go? I can't find it. You can go back up to Window, Workspace, and Reset Essentials, and it'll bring everything back. And you'll see that it actually added more because I have made changes to my essentials before. So now it's completely fresh back to the original Photoshop workspace. Okay, so let's go over the different panels and what they do. So when you're looking at your screen over here on the left-hand side, you're going to see your toolbar. Your toolbar can look a couple different ways. So right now, my toolbar is long and skinny. If you have a long and skinny toolbar, but you cannot see all the way down to these little color boxes right here, you just need to change the resolution on your computer. And all we have to do on the laptops, depending on your computer, it's usually in the same places, but I'm going to close down everything, go back to my main screen, and all you have to do is right-click on the middle of your screen and do Display Settings. And for some reason, our recommendation on the laptop that I work on, it says 150, which is way too big. We call it old man mode in my classes. So we switch it down to a smaller. Now, you can leave this window open, go back and work in Photoshop, and then go back and switch it back if you like the way your display reads. But it's just a little bit easier of a way to be able to see all of these. Now, you can also, instead of changing your display setting, you can just go up here and click on these two little arrows, and it'll make your display, it makes your toolbar half the size, but it makes it wider. If that works better for you, that's fine as well. Okay, just so that you can see these boxes. Again, though, if your screen's kind of out of proportion, making your toolbar wider may take over more of your workspace than you want it to. Now, on the toolbar, the next bar that you need to see is the option bar above it. So it runs right here across the top. It's the option bar. And you can kind of click on the different tools and you're going to see that option bar switch depending on what tool you're on. And that just gives you the, let's call them the highlights of that tool. So you can make adjustments to those most basic things with that tool. And it makes it a lot easier when you're working. Okay, so you can see, like I said, just kind of click on a few of them. You can see the toolbar change or the option bar change. Okay. Then, one thing that I missed on the toolbar, you will see these little arrows next to each of the tools. If you click on it and hold it, or click on it and hover, depending on what type of computer and what kind of mouse you have, you will get drop downs for all of those. So those have anywhere between 2 and like 5 or 6 extra tools underneath each one. They're split by categories. So sometimes when you can't find a tool, it's because it's just hidden under that little drop down, and all you do is click and hold or click and hover, and then will come up. Okay, now let's switch to the opposite side. So over here on your right-hand side is where you have all of your panels. Okay, so on my panels, since we reset this, you can clearly see that I have color, swatches, gradients, and patterns, properties, adjustments, libraries, layers, channels, and paths. Now, the only problem that I find with using the Essentials preset is the fact that there's so many panels out here. I don't always use color. I don't always use swatches. I rarely use gradients and patterns. So I like to have them open, but I don't want to have a whole space dedicated to them. You're going to use the properties panel and you're going to use the layers panel a lot. So we want to go ahead and increase the size for that. So one of the great thing about these panels is you can easily adjust them and move them. So simply by clicking on color and dragging it, I could move that panel anywhere I want it. So if I was working on something and I wanted to be able to like go right back and forth, I can move it right next to it, or I can move it to the panel bar. So right here is a bar that you can attach your panels to, and whenever they're on that bar, you can close them and open them, but they don't completely disappear. So you still have quick access to them. So this time I'm going to take color and I'm going to drag it. And you can see if I put it right here, you can see this blue line come up. It's going to place it right there. So it would still be wider. Or you can place it right here and see a little bitty blue bar, and it's going to attach it to that bar. So now I have it. It's out of the way, but if I click on it, boom, it's back open again, and I click it and it's gone again. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the swatches, the gradients, and the patterns. So all you do is click on it and drag it. I'm going to drop it right on top of the paint. And then I'll do gradients, do the same thing, drop it right on top. And then do patterns and drop it right on top as well. So now properties increased in size, my layers increased in size, and you can even put your cursor in between the two and pull and drag to be able to open those areas larger. Okay, so I also personally use the brush tool a lot. So I like to add that to my bar as well. So if you come up here to window and find brushes, so window and go down to brushes and click on it, you're going to see it automatically added that to my panel bar as well. So then I can just close it down. They're on here if I need them, and I can make adjustments to them. Okay, next we're going to talk a little bit about changing an image size. So all of these things that we're going over, we're just going to touch on them for today. We'll work a little bit with them for the next couple weeks. This is not going to make you an expert in Photoshop, but it's going to give you a nice little touch on all these things. And then if you decide to take a class on Photoshop or start teaching yourself Photoshop on your own, you at least know some of these basic information, some of this basic information. So the next thing we want to do is we want to size the image. And there's a couple different ways of doing this. So by size, I can mean a couple different things. First of all, I want you to go up to View and go down to Rulers and make sure it has a check mark next to it. If it doesn't, then your screen's going to look like this. There's going to be no rulers. But if you go to View and hit Rulers and put that check mark there, you can now see how big your image is. Now, when you first use Photoshop, everything's set to pixels. So let's change that real quick so we can all be on the same page. So you're going to go up to Edit. You're going to go up to Edit and go all the way down to the bottom where it says Preferences, and it's going to give you another pop-up screen. In that pop-up screen, you want to go to Unit and Rulers. Okay, so you go to Edit, Preferences, Units and Rulers, and select it. And here is your preference pop-up panel. Right here under Units, change your rulers to inches. Now there's a lot of different things you can change in here, but again, we're just touching on all this, so we're not going to go through all these different preferences, but you can set a lot of things. You can set special keys that you want to be able to use for shortcuts. You can change the color of things like, you know, your guides. You can do a lot of different things in here to make Photoshop strictly for you. So after you change the rulers to inches, we're going to hit OK. And now your ruler should show this image is about 55 inches by about 84 maybe. So it's a very large image. Okay, so now we can see it on our screen, but if we wanted more information, we can go in and we can make a few changes to it. So first of all, the easiest way to be able to see something better is to zoom or to pan. So we're going to zoom in and out of this. You can do it down here on your toolbar using the zoom tool, which looks like a sucker. It's on the bottom. On my option bar at the top, you can see I now have one with a plus sign and one with a minus sign. So I could click on it with the plus sign and then go up to the minus sign and click it out. You can change it to 100%. You can change it to fit screen. You can change it to fill screen. So you can do all those things right up here. Once you start working a lot in this program, though, you're going to realize that sometimes keyboard shortcuts just work better. In this case, it's 3 different keys. So you press and hold Control and hit your plus sign to zoom in. Press and hold Control and hit the minus sign to zoom out. Or press and hold the Control key and hit 0. Now, these shortcuts only work if you're not on a Mac. So if you are on a Mac, you're going to have to just look up the shortcuts. You can Google shortcuts for Mac for Photoshop. Okay, so that's how you zoom in and zoom out. But we also want to resize this image so it's something that makes a little more sense for what we're doing with it. So we're going to come up to Image. And you'll notice that there's an image size and there's a canvas size. So the first one we're going to go to is we're going to do image size. And we're going to change this image down to closer to like a 4:6. So I'm in the width, I'm going to type in 4. Now, my problem is mine aren't linking. So it's going to adjust my aspect ratio if I don't do it correctly. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to hit Control Z. Oh, it won't let me Control Z. Okay, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click on this little chain link. You'll see that it has the little brackets that come out now. That way, if I type in my width of 4, it's going to give me a height of 6. It's going to keep that aspect ratio, so it's not going to squish my stuff, it's not going to stretch it, it's going to keep it right about the same. And I'm already at a resolution of 72, which is fine because we're just working on the computer today. And I'm going to hit OK. And again, you can tell now it's much smaller than it was on my screen, but it took it from 50-something inches down to 4, so that's okay. But I'm going to press and hold Control and hit the plus sign to get it to be able to zoom in. Okay, the other thing that I said that you could see up here under image was canvas size. So if you click on canvas size, what you need to understand with this is the actual like original white artboard that we were working on. So the image is the overall image itself that we're working with, where the canvas size is going to change the canvas, not the layer itself. So we're going to adjust the canvas. This comes in handy sometimes when you're working on something and you're like, oh, I should have done this, you know, an extra inch bigger so I could add this to it. You could just go and change it without adjusting the image size itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this for an extra inch on each side, so I have half an inch all the way around. So I'm going to go 5 by 7 instead of a 4:6. So 5:7. It'll add a half inch on each side. Now, the next area down says anchor. Right now, I want it to be right here in the center so that it adds the white all the way around it. If you wanted to add to just one end, so say you're working on a 4x6 and you wanted to make it a 4x7 and add a little extra on one end, you can move these little arrows so that that dot is on the opposite side from where you want it, and it'll add the white to it. You also have canvas extension color down here, which right now I just want it on white, but you can choose to have the background change to black, to gray, or you can do the foreground background colors, which are over here on your toolbar. So we're just going to stick with white for right now and hit OK. And that added a lot more than an inch all the way around it. But you can see what it did. So it changed it. Now I'm up at a 9x13, I think, which I don't know why it jumped so big, but I can always go back up to image and canvas size, and I can switch it back down. Okay, we'll leave it this way, and I'll actually show you the crop tool instead. Okay, so under the fifth tool down on your toolbar is your crop tool. So we're going to take it back down to a 5x7 because that's what I wanted in the first place. When I did that, you can see on my option panel that it changed again. And I'm going to come back up here. You can do ratio, which would just keep it at the same ratio we had it at. You can do width, height, resolution, so you can set those three things and get it exactly where you want it. You can change it to the original ratio. You can change it to a square so that it automatically crops it to a square. It does a 1-to-1 ratio, or you can do a 5x7, you can do a 2x3, a 16x9. But it also has some presets down here for you. So if you use an 8.5x11 a lot, it's preset in there. So there's these different presets. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the 5x7. And that's automatically cropping it to that ratio. Now, if for some reason you wanted it to crop in the opposite direction, you can either twist it just by going on the corner. You can change right here where the two arrows are, you can flip it. So it changes the aspect ratio to the opposite direction. But all you have to do is click and drag from the corner. I want to keep my aspect ratio the same, the original, so I'm going to go back to original ratio. And now when I drag it, I can drag it down here and thin out that white line all the way around. When I get it the way I want it, I'm just going to hit the check mark on the top of my screen. Again, it made it smaller on my screen, so I want to do Control-0 and get it back up so that I have a fill my screen type of situation. Okay, the last area that I want you guys to look at today is going to be layers. So in Photoshop, the way I explain it is back when you were in kindergarten, everybody had that one kindergarten teacher or elementary teacher that used the projector, and she would write on clear plastic sheets and lay them on the projector and project them up on the wall of the board. So think of layers as clear plastic sheets. And for each plastic sheet that you use, you can put different information on it. You could put an image on it. You could put text on it. You could put words on it. You could put designs or shapes or whatever that you're working on. It could be even just a solid color. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a couple new layers so you can see how these work. So over on your right hand side, you have a panel called layers, and you can see right now we have one layer. It's called background. Currently, it is locked. It has a little lock on it. Usually your background layer remains locked. You can take the lock off just by clicking on it. It then changes it to layer 0. Or if you needed to lock it again, you'll see the little lock above the layer right here, and you can click on it and lock it back into place. On the right-hand side, you're going to see a little eyeball. I'm sorry, left-hand side, you're going to see a little eyeball. If you click the eyeball, it closes that layer. This comes in handy when you have multiple layers and you're trying to do something on just one and you're trying to like focus in on it. You can turn those layers off and on so you can see. Now we're going to make a copy of this layer. So you're going to click on it, drag it down to the bottom of the layer panel, and there's a square with a little plus sign. And you're going to let go of it. Now it automatically locked this one. I don't want it locked, so I'm going to turn the lock off. And I now have two layers, layer 0 and layer 0 copy. You can easily change the name, which makes this a little bit easier. So if you knew that you were going to have a copy that was paint and a copy that had a dog on it, you can name these layers. Or if you're doing something where you're making slight changes, this comes in handy because you could say dog with no ears, and then the other one is dog with ears, so that you don't have to keep opening and closing these to see which layer you're on. So you can just rename them. And all you do to rename them is just double click on the name of the layer itself. And I'll just call this one second paint. Okay, so you now have two layers. If I closed one, I would be able to see through to the other. Okay, but since they're the same thing, it's kind of hard to do that, so I will show you that in a moment. But you'll notice that my top layer is gray. If yours isn't gray, all you have to do is click on the layer you want to be working on. This is a problem a lot of first-time students have, is that they'll have clicked down here somewhere. You can see that neither of my layers are selected, and they're trying to do something, and they're like, hey, I can't paint. It's telling me I have no layer selected. It's because you just have to come over here and click on it. Or they'll be like, hey, I want to paint on layer 2, and they're trying to paint and they see nothing because they're on the wrong layer. So make sure you're always on the right layer. That's the first thing you need to do. It's a mistake you're going to make. It's okay. It's just the way it works. Make sure you're on that layer. Now let's resize this layer. Okay, so we have paint 2 selected, and you're going to press and hold Control and press the T, as in train, T button. And you're going to see that it comes up with these little squares around your corners and your sides. You can simply now click on one of those and drag it and resize your image. That's going to maintain your aspect ratio. So it's going to be the same shape. It's not going to make any changes to it as long as you do that. If you want to squish it or stretch it, you would just press Shift while you're doing it, and it would allow you to change the shape in or out or even diagonally, so you can change it to a different shape. So I want you to go ahead and resize this. Remember that it's Control and T to go ahead and get it to transform. And when you get it the way you like it, you're going to hit the check mark at the top of the screen. Okay, so now that we have two different kind of images on the layers, you can definitely tell if you close the eye on one, that you can see the other one. Okay, you'll also notice that in our layers, whatever's on the top of the layer panel, so our second paint is on the top, that's what's on the top of this image. So as you're building these things, you want to put whatever you want to be seen first on the top layer. Otherwise, the other layers are going to cover it. And you can move these simply by clicking on it, holding it, and dragging it. So now let's create a shape. So we can create one more layer just to see what it does. So on your toolbar, you're going to go down towards the bottom. It's the third one up from the color option. So it probably looks like a rectangle right now. But again, if you click and hold on it, you can see these different shapes. And I'm going to go ahead and do a rectangle. I'm going to keep it easy. But I want my rectangle to be this color, kind of purpley in here. So I'm going to come over to this front square and I'm going to click on it and my color picker pops up. And again, this panel, you can move it around so it's not blocking anything. Whenever you're in the color picker, you can just come over and pick a color on the color picker. Now, one of the mistakes that some people make is that they'll come over here and they're like, oh, I clicked on blue. It doesn't necessarily pick up the blue over here that they want. You're going to have to tell it where to go. But I want a very specific purple out of my photograph. So if I pull my cursor over on top of the image itself and I hover, you can see my cursor now is an eyedropper. So I can simply go down. I want the purple that's right in here. It's kind of pinky. So you can pick it till you get the right color that you want using your eyedropper, and then you'll hit OK. So now you'll see my little box over here is that purple color. I'm going to come over, I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag and create the shape that I want. Now my shape has some rounded corners on it just because one of my last projects I was working with that, so I'll just fix that. I'll show you guys how to do that whenever we talk about shapes. Okay, so I drew a shape now. It's currently selected and I want to deselect it. That's Control D, or you can just grab one of your other tools and switch it off. So anytime you have something selected, you can get out of it by grabbing one of your other tools and kind of clicking over in your workspace. Okay, now that you'll be on your own. You can do as much as you want to this before you turn it in. I just want you playing with these few little things so you can copy some layers. You can add some shapes to it if you want. You don't have to, it's up to you. You've done the practice with me, so we're good if you want to turn this in right now. But what we're going to do is we're going to save this 2 different ways. And the reason is because I want you to save it as a working file. A working file means that you maintain all of your layers. If you wanted to go back and work on it, you would still have those layers. So it's called a working file. So what you're going to do is go up to File and Save As. You're going to figure out where you want to save this to. So I'm just going to save mine into my pictures folder. Save it wherever that makes sense for you. For all of my files, I want you to change it. Right now it's called PS in class 1. I just want you to put your name in front of it. So I'm going to type in _, and leave the PS in class 1. And I want this to say Photoshop right here. And I'm going to hit OK, save. You may get a little pop-up screen asking you if it's okay to save it because it has to do with the size of the file and everything, and just hit OK. You can also click, I believe, on that little pop-up screen and tell it not to pop up anymore, which is why mine didn't pop up. Okay, so now you have this saved as a PSD file. PSD files are a little bit larger. I don't want to keep that. So, or I don't want to use that for you to turn in because then you guys have larger files that are being turned in. So we're going to change it into a JPEG to submit it. Adobe made a slight change to this over the past couple years. So if you've worked in Photoshop before, you used to be able to just go Save As and change it to JPEG and it would save. They don't let you do that anymore. Now you need to come over here to the where your layers panel is. And these little lines right here, I believe there's like 4 little lines, and you're going to click on it and you're going to do flatten image. What this is doing is it's compressing for you. Now you have to tell it to compress where it used to compress if you just change the file type. Now you have to tell it to compress. You'll notice there's only 1 layer. Why is this not the only file that I have you save? Well, if you decided to come back and work on it later, I can't work with these individual layers. So this is all 1 image now. So it's so much harder. You would have to go back and find the original images, try and resize them, do all that. So save the working file, make changes to it, JPEG file is your final file. So now that we have it flattened, you go up to File and Save As. And down here where we made sure it was Photoshop before, we're just going to change it to JPEG, just regular JPEG. You click on it and do Save. It's going to save into the same spot. It's going to give you JPEG options. For most things, 8 to 10 is pretty good. Anything that you know you're going to print or is like a big project that you know you want to save for a while, go ahead and push it all the way up to 12, which is max. It's going to make a little bit bigger file, but it's going to save it under the best options. And hit OK. Okay, so we are all done for tonight. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this, you're going to turn this JPEG file into me under the module that's called PS in Class 1. I would like for you to have this done, this practice done before Wednesday so that we can discuss in class any questions that you have. But this is just a little basis to, this is what we would have done in class, and that gives you a little knowledge in the basics of Photoshop. Thank you.